Government House Leader Dominic LeBlanc, and beside him, Andrew Scheer. Until yesterday, he was the Speaker. Now he's just the Conservative House Leader. It's still a good job. And Peter Julian is the NDP House Leader. Good to see you all, gentlemen.
Good to be here.
Good to see you in the foyer, especially. Okay, Dominic LeBlanc, you're the man in charge here. Once you, the first thing on the agenda is the motion to get the middle class tax cut through. Is that the first order of business here?
Yeah. What we're going to do, Rosemary, is on Monday we're going to give notice of a Ways and Means motion, which would allow us to proceed with the middle class tax cut. We're also going to bring clarity around the tax-free savings account issue.
What kind of clarity?
Well, in terms of our campaign commitment to return it to a lower limit, not the $10,000 limit, but to bring it down. So that'll become clear on Monday, and our plan would be to vote that on Wednesday.
Okay, become clear how? Was it to bring it from 10 to 5? Is that still the plan, or is there a different plan?
The Minister of Finance will talk about that. I talked to House leaders this morning. It's the campaign commitment we made to reduce it from the $10,000 limit to what it had been previously as an annual limit. But the Minister of Finance will make that clear on Monday, and we hope to vote on that on Wednesday.
Okay, so where do we sit, gentlemen, then already on support or not? Because you're going to have to make some decisions quickly about where you stand on the middle class tax cut on the Ways and Means motion. Andrew Scheer?
Well, you know, it's not so much a tax cut as it is a tax shift, and we know what tax shifts usually result in. And there are a number of policy planks in the Liberal platform that called for higher taxes. So as a general rule, the Conservative caucus are opposed. We are opposed to raising taxes. We'll see what's in it and see exactly how they propose to fulfill their campaign commitments. But if it is, in fact, going to roll back the ability for Canadians to save money tax-free or raise taxes, we'll be opposing it.
Peter Julian?
Well, we'll take a look at it. We want to see the motion, of course. The issue of the tax-free savings account is something that Tom Mulcair raised in the campaign as well, that wasn't a good use of taxpayers' money to expand that. But in terms of where the Liberals are going to be putting themselves and what that actually means, some concerns are that it means a tax cut for higher income folks, but not a tax cut for those earning less than $45,000 a year. So we'll be looking at the motion, of course, studying it very attentively, and as the Progressive Opposition, making our position known once we've looked at the motion.
Okay, I started there because it seems to me that was sort of the cornerstone of your platform. But tomorrow, what should we expect from the throne speech? The Prime Minister, as he came down the stairs, because this Prime Minister does that, he said that it would be efficient. So it'll be 5 minutes long? What should I take from that?
Yeah, that might not be efficient, Rosemary. That might be derelict. No, I think it's not going to be a political document with a series of campaign slogans. My understanding is it will be a focused document, rather businesslike, laying out what we hope to achieve in the coming months of the legislative session. And it's no surprise it'll be the main elements that we campaigned on and that were in the platform. But it's not going to be full of high rhetoric and flowery phrases. It's going to lay out what we hope is a work plan that with my colleagues and the other 335 MPs in the House of Commons, we can work on collectively together.
A short-term sort of thing. This is where we're going for the next 6 months or what have you?
But again, it would depend how long this session of Parliament would be. But it's more. I think it's more than a 6-month plan, to be fair. But it's a plan that typically at some point in the next year or two gets revised with a new session of Parliament. So I would describe it as a medium-term plan.
What do you want to hear from that, Andrew Scheer? I mean, you know, we know the broad strokes of what the Liberal government intends to do. What do you want to hear more concretely tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise that we disagreed with their campaign commitments. We campaigned against it for 78 days. But the Liberal government has already reconsidered some of its proposals and some of its goals. We've seen that with the Syrian refugees. We're hoping we can convince them to reconsider some other ones, like running massive deficits, like raising taxes on Canadians, like spending money that we don't have.
I think Dominic would probably disagree with the way you're characterizing it.
But in fairness,
the word massive, which is shocking.
Okay, well, yeah, I don't want to use subjective terms. They have already said they will run deficits.
Yes.
We would like them to reconsider that. We will be arguing that they should avoid that. We worked very hard to get back to balanced budgets, and we'd like to see them stick to that. So we'll be making the case for why they should.
Peter Julian, what do you want to hear tomorrow?
I'm looking forward to hearing it because I think a lot of Canadians across the country voted for change. So the question then is, what direction is the government putting forward? So I'm looking forward to seeing what's in that document. We'd like to see action on childcare, for example, action on healthcare, because that is a looming crisis in a little over a year. We're going to see at the beginning of significant cutbacks in our healthcare sector right across the country, which means longer waits in emergency rooms. It means fewer people having access to family doctors. So those are the kinds of issues that we're looking forward to seeing in the throne speech, and I don't care if there's flowery rhetoric or not. What counts is the content and the direction that the government's taking.
Let me go back to the more specifics. The change in the mission on ISIS, which is going to happen sometime between now and March. The planes will come out. More trainers will go in. Will that be something that will come up for debate or vote? What is going to be the approach in terms of how you bring it into Parliament and whether people get a say in where it goes?
Well, Rosemary, the tradition has been, and it's certainly one that we would intend to maintain, that when you send Canadian forces into a combat circumstance, there should be a debate and a vote in Parliament. We don't believe it's necessary to have a debate and vote in Parliament to bring back the fighter jets that have been on a mission that had been approved by the previous Parliament. That was a clear campaign commitment. There was a debate for 79 days and a vote on that. But before we would undertake a combat mission at some future point, of course, there should be a discussion. But the Minister of Defense, to be fair, hasn't finalized with our allies what a different mission might look like. You mentioned training. That's obviously a key part of it. But my understanding is that's not final, but once it's final, we'd want to work with the opposition and others.
Yeah, I guess some people would quibble a little bit with what combat becomes, though. There was conversations in the previous Parliament that trainers or people that were painting targets were actually in a combat role. So, yeah.
And again, when the Minister of Defense, I think, has a precise idea what our coalition partners want Canada to do and what the government is prepared to do, that would be an absolutely proper conversation to have. But sort of hypothetically, we don't have those details yet, to my understanding.
Okay, how important is it for both of your parties to weigh in on, okay, it's not going to be the planes, because fair enough, that was part of the election campaign, but what the future of that mission looks like? Do you want to see that come before the House?
Absolutely. And
even if it's not combat, even if it's just an increase in trainers?
No, but I mean, in fairness, the Liberals have announced they are substantively changing the mission, and they are pulling the Air Force out of the coalition efforts against the fight against terror. We think that that's a legitimate point of debate in the House, and they have a majority. I don't know why they wouldn't want that debated. It's a thing our government did when we launched missions. I know just the other day they had a very substantive debate in the British House of Commons where the United Kingdom decided to enhance its mission against terror. And we feel that this is the time that Canada should be looking at ways that we can increase our participation against the fight against this evil and deadly threat against not only security in the region, but security for Canadians as well. ISIS has declared war on Canada.
Peter Julian, how important is it to have that debate in there?
Well, if we're talking about a substantial expansion of the training mission, we will be looking potentially at Canadian soldiers in combat. And so that's a real concern of ours. We believe for transparency, these kinds of debates should be held on the floor of the House of Commons. The one concern that many people recognize is that we've got to cut off the lifeline of ISIS. These brutal thugs use their shipments of oil to actually help to sustain their military power. And so the violence is very much connected to the economic success they've had working on the international oil market. I think Canada could do a lot more to cut back on that fuel that's going to ISIS and allowing them to continue to do their despicable, violent things.
When we left this place, everyone bemoaned the tone inside the House of Commons, and it was perhaps because it was headed into an election and everyone was geared up, and you were all MPs at the time, so you remember what it was like. Here we are again, everyone's promising a new tone. Are you going to make life difficult for Speaker Regan, or are you going to try and make this something, a different way of doing business in the House of Commons? Dominic LeBlanc? Because you are feisty in there. I think that's fair to say.
Feisty.
You say that and then burst out laughing.
Yeah, well,
it's rather,
if people have watched, they know what I mean.
Look, you can have feisty debates.
Sure.
You can have substantive disagreements with colleagues. You can respect and like one another. I like and respect my two colleagues as House leaders. We've known each other, worked together before. We have a laugh together. I think we can do good parliamentary business together. Doesn't mean we'll agree. We'll vote different ways and we'll have robust discussions. I think all of us have acknowledged publicly, I certainly have, that the tone in the last Parliament was increasingly hyper-partisan. And to be fair, everybody can share a portion of the blame for that. It's not ascribing it to one group. I hope we can all rise to the occasion. I certainly heard in my constituency in New Brunswick that they wanted Parliament to be more collegial. It doesn't mean that it doesn't disagree with, people don't disagree, people don't discuss different ideas. But we can do so with some respect and affection for one another. And I hope and think we can certainly make that last. I hope for a good amount of time. You're right, the arrival of an election necessarily sharpens it up. But even then, I'm hoping it's different.
Yeah.
As Dominic said, I mean, I've worked with Dominic and Peter in the previous Parliament with my capacity as a Speaker. I could say for both of them, you know, yes, they were feisty, engaged
He's
in
giving
debate.
you a review now, John.
No, but
Thank you. Well, that's great.
But,
1 to 10.
Yeah.
I kept a score sheet.
Who was feisty?
But I think they never tried to make my job difficult for the sake of making it difficult. And I think that's the challenge for the new Speaker, is recognizing when members of Parliament are bringing passion to a debate and when they're crossing the line into a hyper-partisan tone and maybe having that spill out into the rest of the parliamentary business. There were a lot of days in the House of Commons where good things happened, and not that didn't always get media attention. But I think that you'll find in the Conservative caucus a strong desire to oppose the government's agenda where we disagree with it, oppose it given the tools we have in opposition, but at the same time understand that Canadians do expect a certain amount of cooperation on areas where we can find common ground.
Last word, Peter.
Well, Dominic and Andrew and I get along very well, and that's the first step. We certainly saw in the last Parliament the Speaker being put in difficult positions, and I think congratulations to Jeff Reagan as the new Speaker. We're going to be willing to work with him. There'll be some very robust debates, but I think all of us are aware that we shouldn't be crossing the line, and I think that'll make for a very healthy democracy. Very vigorous debates, very robust debates, feisty debates sometimes, but understanding that democracy is best served by us playing within the rules.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Dominic
Thanks,
LeBlanc,
Rosemary.
Andrew Scheer, and Peter Julian. Coming up on